One of my primary issues with your faith tradition is that by claiming constantly and incessantly that we are the only ones, that is, our system, our faith tradition, is the only one that can properly interpret the scriptures, it automatically leads you to constantly accuse others who are seekers of the truth, who are trying to study the scriptures and come to a conclusion of what is it teaching? What does Jesus want us to know? You're going to constantly cast aspersions on the scriptures themselves, creating not only confusion, but discouraging and dissuading people from seeking the truth. Because if you're saying, well, we're the only ones, or our faith tradition is the only one who can properly interpret the scripture, then you're basically telling anybody that would come to the scriptures it's a waste of time, because reading it and understanding what it's saying, well, that's just your interpretation. That's just your interpretation. You don't really, who do you think you are? You really think you can understand what the scriptures is saying? Especially if you conclude that it says something that goes against our faith tradition. And the problem is it discourages people from being seekers of truth. And so you actually don't develop in your faith and knowledge of who God is and what the gospel teaches, but you actually just recoil into this blind faith of, I just trust the system. I trust that my spiritual guide knows best. And yet if you were to go to those same spiritual guides with a lot of the questions that you might have in your heart that are raised when you read the scriptures, most of the time they're going to tell you, don't ask questions. How dare you question us, right? And this happens often, when they go to their ustaj or maybe an imam, and they start to ask questions about, well, wait a second, why does the Quran say this and this? And then why does the scriptures say this, and why did Muhammad say that we can consult the scriptures, but then you're saying it's corrupted? And once you start raising these questions that, there's contradictory statements within the Quran, and then the scriptures doesn't seem to be corrupted. Why are we just blanket stating? Once you say that, then what's the response you're normally going to get? Sit down, just trust us. Stop asking questions. It's a grave sin in Islam to ask questions. And so don't ask any questions. Now, I know if you're a sincere Muslim, you think that you're allowed to ask questions, but you're only allowed to ask questions within the context of fully accepting the prophethood of Muhammad without being able to verify it. So you have to accept it without any evidence that he was truly a legitimate prophet. And once you base your faith and your questioning with that assumption, well, then any line of reasoning or questioning that challenges that assumption is a sin. And you're told it's a sin to question the prophethood of your prophet. And so you're committing a grave, grave sin that'll take you straight, to hell. So there's a lot of discouragement in seeking to know what truth is when you are the ones who claim to be the true interpreters of the Bible. Well, like this passage, Jesus is, clearly claiming to be a man and not God. So that's a legit passage because it conforms to what Islam teaches about Jesus just being a prophet. But this passage where Jesus is clearly explaining that he is Yahweh, he is the one true God, the Father, Son, and Spirit is Yahweh. Well, then that's not true. That's a corruption that was later added by Christians. And so the reason we know it is because we filter everything by our interpretation, and our interpretation is based on the assumptions that are given in the Quran. And yet the assumptions given in the Quran, you cannot confirm by any outside sources because you're not allowed to question the legitimacy of the prophethood of Muhammad. Do you see the problem here? Or am I just missing it, right? Oh, well. Be a seeker of the truth. Come to the scriptures with a sincere and open mind, and God will guide you in the truth.